A warm welcome to another episode of SciencePunk Explains the Frame Budget Approach. In the last episode, we opened up the frame budget approach as a broader perspective on time, change, and, well, physical description itself. Now we're ready to make the first real deep cut. Is irreversibility really explained as soon as someone says the word entropy? Or is that just a bit too coarse? Okay, let's get into it.
So, here's the plan. We'll kick off with a quick refresher on the arrow of time, and then look at the standard answer physics gives us. Yep, entropy. From there, we'll start asking if that's the whole story. Then we'll dig into the frame budget approach's alternative, this idea of a step-by-step reality and a concept it calls path burial. Finally, we'll wrap it all up and see where this leads us next.
All right, Section 1, the arrow of time. Before we can really dig into the answer, we got to make sure we're crystal clear on the question, the fundamental mystery we're all trying to solve here.
This is the big one. You know, at the deepest level, the laws of physics don't seem to care which way time is flowing. You can run the equations forward, you can run them backward, they work just fine either way. And yet, our reality, the world we actually live in, is a one-way street. Eggs don't unscramble themselves, shattered glasses don't magically fly back together. So what gives? Why the disconnect? This tension right here, that's the starting point for this whole conversation.
Now, of course, physics isn't just throwing its hands up in the air. It has a very powerful, very well-established answer that you've probably heard a million times. Let's take a serious look at the physicist's go-to explanation. And that standard answer is entropy. Simply put, it's a measure of disorder. You know, a perfectly stacked deck of cards has low entropy. After you shuffle it, it has high entropy. The real kicker is the second law of thermodynamics, which says that for any system left on its own, the total disorder, the entropy, can only go up. It never goes down. Why? Because there are just way more ways for things to be messy and disordered than for them to be neat and tidy. So systems just naturally drift toward messiness.
And let's be absolutely clear. This is a huge idea. The concept of entropy is incredibly successful. It's why your coffee gets cold. It's at the heart of how engines work. It connects the tiny world of atoms to the big world we see around us. It is, without a doubt, a cornerstone of modern physics. It's a serious, indispensable tool. But does it explain everything about irreversibility?
And this brings us right to the heart of this explainer. We're going to start poking at this a little bit and ask a question that might feel a bit uncomfortable. Is entropy the fundamental cause of why things are irreversible, or is it just a really good description of what's going on?
Think of it like this. Knowing a company's end-of-year profit is super useful, right? But that final number doesn't tell you the story of every single sale, every purchase, every single transaction that happened throughout the year. So the question is entropy that final profit number, or is it the detailed story of the individual transactions? This slide really puts the two ideas side by side. The standard view basically says that the increase in entropy is the engine. It's what causes irreversibility. It's the fundamental driver. But the frame budget approach suggests something different. It says entropy isn't the cause. It's more like a macro language. It's the bottom line summary of a much deeper step-by-step process. It's the accountant's final report, not the day-to-day ledger.
And this is exactly what that shift in focus looks like. The FBA isn't trying to get rid of entropy, not at all. Instead, it's just asking a sharper, more specific question. As the source material puts it, it asks, how does irreversibility actually show up in a world that changes one step at a time, where our ability to see what's going on is always kind of limited?
Okay, so if the FBA is asking this new question, what's its answer? Well, it starts by looking at reality in a totally different way. It treats change, well, kind of like bookkeeping. Now, this is a pretty radical idea, but it's also incredibly clean. The FBA just throws out the whole idea of time as this smooth, flowing river. Instead, it says reality is more like a movie reel. There's a sequence of frames or states, one after the other. The frame number just goes up. That's it. Time doesn't make things change. The sequence of changes is what lets us talk about time. And this whole picture is built on just three simple ideas. You have a frame, which is just a snapshot of the universe. Then you have a minimal event, which is the tiniest possible change you can have between one frame and the next. And then, and this is the key part, you have a budget. The idea here is that change isn't free. Every little event has a cost, some capacity that's required to make it happen.
So if every change has a cost, where does irreversibility come from? Well, the FBA says that part of that budget gets spent on changes that are, let's say, non-refundable. As a system clicks from frame to frame, these little irreversible bits just pile up. The FBA has a very specific name for this pileup, which you can see laid out here. It calls it aging.
And this is so important to get right. Aging here is not just some fuzzy metaphor for getting older. In this system, it is a physical, accountable number. It's the running total of all the non-recoverable, irreversible changes that have happened in a system's entire history. You could, in principle, track it on a balance sheet.
This leads us right to the heart of the FBA's answer. If irreversibility is just this accumulation of non-recoverable changes, how does that actually stop us from just going backward? The mechanism it proposes is called path burial.
Okay, that definition sounds like a real mouthful, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. It just means that as a system moves forward and interacts with everything around it, the number of possible ways you could take to get back to a very specific earlier state just shrinks and shrinks dramatically. The paths that could lead you back get buried under the sheer weight of all the new stuff that's happened since.
Here's a great way to think about it. Moving forward in time, that's like driving on a huge 10-lane highway. Lots of different tiny paths can all lead to the same general place. But trying to reverse the process to get back to your exact starting point, that's not like just making a U-turn on the highway. No, that's like trying to find one specific unmarked dirt track you took at the very beginning, a track that's now been overgrown, washed out by rain, and paved over. The path is buried, it's gone.
Now, it's really important to be precise here. The FBA isn't saying that going back is logically impossible, like it violates some cosmic law. Path burial is an operational idea. It's a statement about the growing asymmetry between going forward and trying to reconstruct the past. The journey forward is easy. The journey back becomes astronomically, practically impossible.
And this leads to the final, absolutely critical point. Even if a system, by some wild 1 in a trillion chance, ended up in a state that looked exactly like a previous one, it would still not be a reversal of time. And why not? Because the frame index, the universe's counter, has moved on. The movie reel is append only. We're at frame 1 billion now, not frame 10. You've just arrived at a new frame that happens to look like an old one. The film, it never ever runs backward.
Okay, that was a pretty deep dive. Let's step back for a second, pull it all together, and see what this new picture of our one-way world really tells us.
So, 3 key things to take away. First, entropy is huge. It's powerful. It's not going anywhere, but it might be the high-level summary, not the root cause. Second, the FBA gives us a sharper operational view. Irreversibility is path burial. It's what happens when the exact path home becomes impossible to find. And that leads to the third and most important takeaway. This whole thing shifts the question. We stop asking this grand fuzzy question, why does time flow, and we start asking a much more concrete practical one. How and where do we actually account for the changes that can't be undone?
And that question sets us up perfectly for our next step. Because if this is all just a matter of bookkeeping, of tracking budgets and non-fundable changes, then the most critical question of all becomes, where do we draw the line? Where does the system end and everything else begin? In the next episode, we'll look at where accounting actually happens. In other words, what an accounting boundary really is. Bye for now, until the next episode, and stay curious.